In this video, I wanted to talk for just a minute about functions. So hopefully this is all something we've seen before, but I think that a lot of students get a little mixed up here at the very beginning of the definition of a function, and this can lead to a lot of trouble later on. So this is probably worth watching just as a review, if nothing else. Okay, a function can quite simply be defined as a map from the domain of our function, so from some set of values to our range where the function is mapped to. Okay, so it's a map between two sets where each value in the domain is mapped to a single value in the range. Okay, that's how we can think of a function. Okay, so sometimes I think it's easiest to explain this by looking at several different examples to see if something is a function or if something is not a function. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at this map here. So let's take a look at our domain. Okay, let's say we have y, a, k, and v, and in our range we have -8, we have -1, 1, and -5. Okay, and here we have y is getting mapped to -8, a is getting mapped to 1, k is being mapped to -1, and v is being mapped to -5. Is this a function? Okay, well, it has to be mapped. Each value here can only be mapped to one value in the range. So in this example, yes, this is a function. Okay, let's take a look at another example. So let's say we have, turn on do not disturb mode there. Sorry about that. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Let's say we have uh, from our domain, we have N, D, R, V, and F. And in our range, we have N, R, and D. That's all we have. And in this case, we have N is mapped to R. We have D is mapped to N. We have R is mapped to R. We have V is mapped to D. And we have F is also mapped to R. How about this one? Is this one a function? Well, each value in the domain can only be mapped to one value in the range. So although you're sending lots of these to a single value here, R, there's three of them that are being mapped to R. This actually is still a function. Okay, and that is because there aren't any values in the domain that are being mapped to more than one value in the range. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's make this one easy. How about A, B, and C being mapped to D, E, and F? So we'll have a map from this set, which we'll call big X, to this set Y, where A is mapped to D, B is mapped to D, and C is mapped to D. Is this a function? Yes, this is a function. Okay, and that's because each value is only being sent to one other value. Okay, you don't necessarily have to cover every value in the set you're mapping to, but you can only have each value in the domain being mapped to a value to one value in the range. Okay, let's look at an example of one that might not be a function. Okay, so let's say we have A, B, C, and D, and we have maybe A, B, C. Okay, A is being sent to A, and A is also being sent to B. B goes to A, C goes to A, and D goes to C. Is this a function? This is not a function. Okay? And the reason this is not a function is because A is mapped to A and B. Okay? So if you ever have any value in the domain being mapped to more than one value in the range, you are not dealing with a function. Okay? Now, most of the time when we're talking about functions, we're dealing with graphs. Okay? So, at least in this class, that'll be the case. So let's draw a few different kinds of graphs. We have a cool little test we can use called the vertical line test. Okay, so here we have some function which is sending values on our x-axis to values on our y-axis. Okay, and let's say it looks a little something like this. So how would you know if this is a function? Okay, the way we would know if this is a function is we perform something called the vertical line test. So here what we can do is we can draw vertical lines anywhere along the function, and if we only pass through one point, okay, that means we have a function. So in this case, we do have a function. Okay, and that's because each value from our x-axis here is being sent to only one value in our y-axis. Note, we can have repeated y values. We have a value here and here, where the y value is the same, but our x values are each only being sent to one individual y value. What about this one? Do we think that this is a function? We just talked about circles earlier, but this is actually not a function. And we can see why this fails. We can draw a vertical line anywhere along this function, and we're going to hit more than one point. So that means, let's say that this is the point 1 here. That means that the point 1 is being mapped to this point and this point. It's being mapped to two different points. Therefore, this is not a function. Okay, this is not a function. All right, so there's a couple of tests you have for deciding whether or not something is a function. You can look at all the values individually in the domain and the range and see where the function maps those values to. Or if you have a graph, you can use something called the vertical line test.